Okay, I have a question to kick things off that honestly, it might change how you look at every magazine cover you see in the checkout aisle.
Oh, I'm intrigued.
We are all so obsessed with the story of self-made success. You know, the image, right? The
Mm.
garage startup, the ramen noodles, the sheer grit.
The genius in the turtleneck, yeah.
Exactly, the person who willed an empire into existence. But what if that narrative, that entire concept of the self-made titan, is actually a carefully constructed illusion?
What's a provocative way to start it?
Yeah.
It definitely goes against the grain of the cultural mythology we've all been fed.
It does, but stick with me. We aren't just saying hard work doesn't matter. Obviously it does. But we're digging into a stack of research today that suggests we need to zoom out.
Way out.
Way out. We're exploring this premise that the ultra-rich are actually system-made.
System-made. That is the key phrase for this deep dive.
Yeah.
The argument here is that these individuals are living blueprints of the economic machine.
Not just isolated titans of industry.
No, they are the inevitable output of a specific design.
So our mission today is to peer behind what the sources call the velvet curtains of wealth. And I want to be clear to you, listening. We aren't looking for secret societies.
No conspiracies here.
We're talking about dissecting the invisible architecture, the tax codes, the legal frameworks, the inheritance models that literally shape success at the very top.
Right. We need to set the tone immediately. This isn't about, people smoking cigars in a back room deciding who gets rich. We're looking at emergent properties.
Which is a term you see a lot in physics or biology, not usually in economics.
Exactly. We're looking at the economy as a complex system. And the sources we have today, data from the OECD agent-based modeling research, reports on global taxation, they all point to one thing.
Which is?
That wealthy individuals are direct manifestations of systemic logic.
Okay, so before we get to the physics of it all, which gets pretty trippy, honestly, we have to start where the money starts, the initial conditions.
That's the starting line.
Let's unpack this classic narrative of the self-made mogul. We love the story of the underdog. But the source material throws a pretty heavy wet blanket on that fire right away.
It does.
It points out that the race is usually decided before the gun even goes off.
It forces us to look at the data rather than the mythology. And one of the most compelling pieces of evidence we have here is about structural inheritance effects.
Which sounds like a very polite, academic way of saying dad's money.
Well, scientifically speaking, yes. The sources cite research indicating that these intergenerational transfers account for roughly 31 to 40% of wealth inequality in major economies.
Let's just pause on that. Up to 40%.
40%.
That is a massive slice of the pie.
It is. It suggests that nearly half of the gap between the rich and everyone else, it isn't about who worked harder or who was smarter.
No.
It's simply about the transfer of assets from one generation to the next.
But it's not just about the cash landing in the bank account, right? The sources talk about this idea of a velvet rope. It's about what that money buys you before you even start a business.
Exactly. It's about risk capacity. If you are starting from zero, truly self-made, one mistake can destroy you.
You miss a rent payment, you're done.
You're done. But if you are starting with a structural inheritance, you have a safety net. You can fail 3, 4, 5 times until you hit the jackpot. That access to capital, to networks, it creates a completely different risk profile.
So you aren't just starting at the starting line, you're starting at the finish line of the previous generation's race. You have the freedom to take these huge swings that result in massive wealth because you won't starve if you miss.
And the data shows this trend is accelerating. We have a report from Reuters in our stack that highlights record wealth transfers.
Really?
Yeah. We are witnessing a demographic shift where billionaire status is increasingly driven by inheritance rather than new entrepreneurship.
So fewer garage inventors, more heirs.
The numbers certainly point that way. The source notes that the top 10% of households hold roughly half of the total wealth across developed economies.
Half the wealth. That's a staggering concentration.
It is. So when you talk about self-made, you have to ask, for that top 10%, how much of that making was actually just starting, these initial conditions? They set the trajectory long before individual effort comes into play.
Okay, but let's play devil's advocate for a second. Let's say you have the money, or you get the money. You still have to keep it, right?
Sure.
Still have to grow it. But the sources talk about this invisible architecture that helps you do that. This is where we move from luck of birth to the actual rules of the game.
This is the systemic foundation. We need to talk about policy. specifically the difference between how we treat labor and how we treat capital.
Money making money versus people making money.
Precisely. The research highlights that our tax code specifically advantage high asset holders. If you earn your living through wages, you wake up, you go to a job, you get a paycheck, you are generally taxed at a much higher effective rate
Higher than what?
than someone whose income comes from capital gains or dividends.
This is always the thing that confuses people. Why is the money I earn by sweating taxed more heavily than my money earns by just sitting in a stock?
Well, the economic argument has always been that it's to encourage investment.
Hmm.
But the structural implication, and this is what this deep dive focuses on, is that the system is designed to reward having money more than it rewards working for money.
It acts like a gravitational pull.
It does.
The bigger the mass of money, the easier it attracts more money, and the less the system takes away from it.
And it's not just domestic tax rates. We have to look at the global mechanisms. The sources discuss global profit shifting in a lot of detail.
This is the offshore stuff, right?
The how of the offshore stuff. And it's important to clarify, this isn't just hiding cash in a suitcase.
Or burying gold bars in the backyard.
Exactly. It's about intellectual property and corporate structures.
Okay, so give us a concrete example of how that works mechanically, because I think people hear offshore and just picture a beach somewhere.
Okay, so imagine a tech giant. They develop a product in a high-tax country where all their engineers live and work.
Right.
But they transfer the rights to that product, the IP, the intellectual property, to a subsidiary in a jurisdiction with, say, zero corporate tax.
Ah, so the profits technically happen in the tax-free zone, even though all the real work happened here, where the tax is high.
Exactly. Earnings are redistributed toward favorable jurisdictions to preserve wealth.
So if I'm a wage earner, I pay my taxes where I live. I can't tell the IRS, actually, my physical labor happened in the Cayman Islands today.
You certainly cannot. But capital is fluid. It can move. And this is the crucial point the analysis brings up. These aren't loopholes.
They aren't. I thought they were.
No. A loophole implies an accident, an oversight in the law. These are features.
Features.
They're negotiated. The accumulation patterns we see reflect the rule structures and legal frameworks. The wealth isn't just a result of business acumen. It's a result of navigating a map that was drawn to lead to this specific treasure.
That really connects back to the listener, because we often look at these figures and think, oh, they're so smart, they found a way to save billions in taxes. But really, the system was built with that door unlocked for them.
Precisely. They're just walking through open doors.
This leads us to the part of the reading that I found the most. Well, mind-bending. We're moving from tax codes to philosophy, the concept of system manifestations.
It sounds abstract, but it's actually very practical when you break it down.
It's reframing identity itself. Instead of seeing a billionaire as a person, a specific guy named Jeff or Elon, we view them as an emergent property. Can you unpack that? It sounds a little sci-fi.
It's a concept from complexity theory. Think of it this way. If you view the economy as a complex system, a massive machine with inputs, outputs, rules, incentives, the ultra-wealthy are the inevitable output of that system's logic.
So they aren't anomalies, they're not glitches in the matrix.
No, quite the opposite. They're what the system is designed to produce. They're not independent errors. They're the proof that the machine is working exactly according to its settings.
That is wild. It's like saying, okay, if you build a machine designed to condense steam into water, you shouldn't be surprised when you get a puddle at the end.
Or think of a video game.
Yeah.
If you design a game where the way to get the highest score is to collect gold coins and ignore everything else,
Right.
the player who ignores everything else and just collects the most coins isn't a bad player.
They're the best player.
They're the best player. They understood the rules perfectly.
And to back this up, the sources cite these agent-based models. I looked this up and it sounds fascinating. It's basically SimCity for economists.
That's a great way to put it. This is where we get empirical. Researchers use computer simulations where they plug in specific policy incentives like those tax breaks we talked about, or inheritance laws.
Okay.
And then they just let the simulation run with thousands of digital agents.
And these agents, they don't have personalities, right? They don't have grit or passion.
No, they are just programmed to follow the rules of the road. They are algorithms responding to incentives. And what happens?
Let me guess.
Specific wealth patterns emerge automatically. You don't need to program greed or genius into the agents. You just program the rules and the wealth concentrations form on their own.
So if you program the game to reward capital accumulation, the agents that accumulate capital win. It's not about their character, it's about the code.
Precisely. The wealthy individual is simply the personification of these reward pathways.
Hmm.
They are the agent that followed the breadcrumbs perfectly.
That actually explains a lot of the behavior we see in the real world. The source material notes that actions like aggressive lobbying or certain corporate practices, things we might find morally questionable,
Mhm.
are simply these individuals acting in alignment with the incentives the system has provided.
Right. If the system rewards lobbying with a, say, 1,000% return on investment via tax cuts, then lobbying isn't corruption in the game logic. It's just rational business strategy.
It's just math.
It's just math. It reinforces the existing power structure. They are doing exactly what the algorithm of the economy tells them to do to win.
This brings us to a specific term that popped up in the research: financialization. Because it feels like the way people win has changed. It's not just about building factories anymore.
It has changed significantly. This is the concept of decoupling wealth from work.
The disconnect.
The data shows that wealth accumulation is increasingly decoupled from productive output.
Okay, let's define productive output. We mean actually making stuff, right?
Yeah.
Services, goods, things people use.
Yes, the real economy. But wealth is growing much faster than the actual production of goods or services.
Ah,
We're seeing a divergence where the financial markets, money just moving around, create value for the holders much faster than a factory creates value by building cars.
so you can get richer by moving money than by making things.
That is the essence of financialization. And this creates what the sources call a compounding advantage. If you are inside the capital markets, your wealth snowballs at a rate that is mathematically impossible for someone outside those markets to catch up with through wages alone.
It's compound interest on steroids. If I'm working for a wage, I'm adding to my bank account linearly, plus one, plus one.
Right.
But if I'm in the market, I'm multiplying. Times 2, times 4.
And there's a cost to this. It's not just numbers on a screen going up. The expert analysis touches on externalities,
That's economists speak for side effects, right?
side effects that someone else pays for. The system tends to externalize costs onto society while privatizing profits.
Can you give me a concrete example of that? How does that play out?
Think about efficiency. A company might cut costs by reducing safety standards or squeezing worker hours or polluting a river. The profit from those savings goes privately to the shareholders immediately. But the cost, the pollution cleanup, the health issues for the community, the burnout of the workforce, that's paid for by society, by the tax tips, by the families.
So the efficiency on the balance sheet is actually just a bill being passed to the public.
Exactly. The profit is private, the risk and the cost are public. And understanding this changes how you view the genius of corporate efficiency. Is it innovation? Or is it just effective cost shifting?
This really forces a narrative shift. I mean, we're so used to the magazine covers, the interviews, the hero worship, how I made my first billion. But if we apply this system-made lens, how does that change our daily perspective?
It changes everything. It demands a shift from individualistic admiration to systemic literacy.
Systemic literacy. I like that term. What does that look like in practice?
It means looking at the scale. The sources point out that the top 1% have gained tens of trillions in wealth recently, while the bottom majority holds a tiny fraction of total assets. When you see a gap that wide, you cannot explain it with individual traits.
Like hard work or waking up at 4 a.m.
Right. You can work hard. You can work 2 jobs, 3 jobs, but you cannot work $10 trillion harder than someone else. It's physically impossible.
It's a different category of existence.
It is. So the dialogue has to move past the individual. The expert argument here is that focusing on individual narratives, who is the richest person today? What car do they drive? It obscures the collective and structural contributions that actually enable that wealth.
We are looking at the puppet, not the strings.
Or rather, to use another analogy, we're looking at the surfer and ignoring the ocean that generated the wave.
That is a great analogy, because if there are no waves, it doesn't matter how good a surfer you are.
Right.
You're just a person sitting on a board in calm water.
Precisely.
Yeah.
And the ocean here is the legal code, the tax policy, the global financial infrastructure. If the ocean wasn't churning out these massive waves of capital concentration, these surfers wouldn't be record breakers.
They might still be successful.
Oh, sure, but they wouldn't be titans on a scale that dwarfs entire nations.
So let's bring this home. We've covered a lot of ground. We've gone from the myth of the self-made man to the hard data of inheritance.
Mhm.
We've looked at the tax codes that act as scaffolding for this wealth, and we've arrived at this idea that billionaires are system manifestations.
It's a journey from personality to architecture.
And the so what here feels huge,
Yeah.
because it can feel a little disempowering, right? Like the machine is rigged, game over.
Actually, I think the so what is the empowering part, because system design changes outcomes.
Explain that.
If wealth is a product of design, if it is the output of a specific agent-based model that we have built, then changing the design changes the outcomes.
So we aren't stuck with this.
No. We are only stuck with it if we believe it's a natural law, like gravity. But it's not gravity, it's code.
It's code.
If we alter tax policy, if we change global coordination on profit shifting, if we change the rules of inheritance, we get a different result.
Well, we can patch the software.
We can rewrite the OS. The output is a choice, not a destiny.
That is the key takeaway. It's not magic, it's mechanics.
It is mechanics.
I want to leave the listener with this final provocation from the source material because it really stuck with me. If the wealthy are system-made rather than self-made, how does that change who we think earns their way to the top?
It certainly redefines the word earn. It forces us to ask, are we rewarding contribution or are we rewarding extraction?
It really does. Next time you see a headline about a billionaire's latest triumph, try looking for the invisible architecture holding them up. It's usually right there in the fine print.
And that is where the real story is.
Thanks for diving in with us.
A pleasure.
See you next time.